set with me today in Manhattan, a very, very special guest joining us, Charlotte Schwab. Dr. Schwab is a psychotherapist, and she is the author of a book, Sex, Lies, and Rabbis, Breaking a Sacred Trust. Go to you, Dr. Schwab. Your book is incredible. I've read a large portion of it, Sex, Lies, and Rabbis, Breaking a Sacred Trust. What are your thoughts at this juncture on the rabbi's trial?
Well, of course, I believe that the rabbi is guilty, along with his son and other witnesses who have come forward. I think it's a terrible tragedy that we allow rabbis to go around breaking their vows, not keeping their sacred trust. I think the fact that we cover up that rabbis exploit and abuse women sexually, as apparently this man has admitted he's done with many women, allows them to think that they can get away with anything, even murder.
Dr. Schwab, it has certainly been brought to the forefront of clergy, priests, ministers, rabbis, and sexual misconduct by the entire Catholic Church debacle, with priests being tried for molestation of young boys. However, rarely do we hear about, or is it publicized, that a rabbi has sexual misconduct. Why is that?
As a matter of fact, there has been a lot of press about rabbis and sexual abuse. A lot in the Jewish press. Gary Rosenblatt of Jewish Week in New York has been wonderful in exposing the kind of thing that has been going on. And we're getting more and more of it now. And I do want to tie in what you said about the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know, Nancy, that 4 times as many priests abuse women as abuse boys?
No, I did not. And actually, I guess I'm surprised because I hear so little about that. But I do know, in my experience as a felony prosecutor for well over a decade, that women and children always seem to get the short end of the stick as victims. Very often, when they were victimized, their crimes went unpunished. I felt very little vindication on behalf of women and children. So I guess in that context, what you say doesn't surprise me. Everyone here in the studio with me, a very, very special guest this morning, Charlotte Schwab. Dr. Schwab has written a book, Sex, Lies, and Rabbis, Breaking a Sacred Trust. It's an incredible book. It deals not only with this story, but her own story as well. Here in the studio with me this morning, a very special guest joining us, Dr. Charlotte Schwab. She's a psychologist as well as an author of Sex, Lies, and Rabbis, Breaking a Sacred Trust. It's an incredible book. Your thoughts on Tom singing as a witness?
First of all, I don't think that she fell in love with him, Nancy. I think that this woman was exploited. She was sexually abused. There is no consent when it comes to a rabbi and ostensibly a congregant, a woman whose husband that he just buried. And he shows up at her door, and right away he's got her having sex with him 7 days a week. No, there
or
has
as I
to be...
said it, Doctor, 8 days a week.
Yes,
all right. I mean, she tallied it up for the jurors, and I think she said 9 times a week. I don't know how he managed to wedge in another woman with that schedule he was keeping.
Busy man, but often these rabbis who exploit women like this are very charismatic. They have very high energy. They could be manic. There are different kinds of personalities that usually lead rabbis to do this, and manic depressive or bipolar is one of those. So that unbelievably they're able to do all of these things and fit it all in. And about the victims being tried, yes, often women who come forward and report that they have been abused by a rabbi when they realize it's abuse and not love, because he's not only got her, he's got other women, he's got a wife, unless he's trying to get rid of her. The women are tried by the congregation, by the community. They're ostracized, they are blamed, they're not believed, and instead of going right to who's at fault here, we put these men on a pedestal, rabbis and clergy. We think of them as holy men. And women have told me that who've been abused by rabbis. They've said, I thought he was God. I would do anything that he said. He just buried my husband. He just visited me in the hospital. I had a mastectomy. He just buried my son. He did this beautiful service. Anything he told me I would do, including buy him. Look what she did, Elaine Samzini. Bought him clothes, a tuxedo. He drove her Lexus, furniture. This is not uncommon with these rabbis. Women do this. I myself did it. I was married to a rabbi.
Charlotte, your story is absolutely incredible. The gist of your book, please tell our viewers.
I start out by telling my own story, who I am, where I came from, brought up in a very religious Orthodox family in Bangor, Maine. Judaism is very important to me, still is, always has been, although after this marriage to this rabbi, it almost destroyed my faith. I got it back. I married this rabbi when I had come out of a terrible, abusive first marriage, domestic violence, which, by the way, is very common. As you know, I've forgotten the statistic. It's already up to like every 2 seconds or 9 seconds a woman is battered or in some way violence against women occurs.
So you identify incredibly with the Nylander story. Everyone here in the studio with me, Dr. Charlotte Rolnick Schwab, weighing in her book, Sex, Lies, and Rabbis, Breaking a Sacred Trust. And of course, at the courthouse, Court TV's Vinnie Politan. Everyone stay with us. In fact, Doctor, before the murder went down, Lynn Jenoff and the co-defendant, Paul Daniels, had thousands of dollars of cash on them just before the killing. Now, you know, Charlotte, these two did not have 2 pennies to rub together. And suddenly, they had thousands of dollars cash. And in my mind, that corroborates Jenoff's story.
Yes, well, I think there are many reasons why it seems to me that Len Jenoff is guilty of the murder that he was hired by Rabbi Nylander to commit. It's not only the money, which is a very big issue. Where did he get this money? And there was money in the Nylander house, which he knew about Rabbi Nylander from his wife's business, or maybe wherever else he'd gotten it, maybe from his mistresses, and he had several. But also there were other witnesses that have testified that they were told that the rabbi that he wanted to see his wife dead, to go up, poof, and disappear, her car go into the river, other things like that. To me, I think there's enough testimony that I don't even have a reasonable doubt in my mind. And of course, I relate that to my own experience. As I say on page 3 in my book, my rabbi husband, when I found out, and he wanted me to find out the cruelty of it, that he was an exploiter of other women sexually, he admitted to 500 names in court. And I can tell all this because it's all on record in a court trial where I got an order of protection and then where he sued me, unbelievably, for alimony. The hubris, the arrogance of these men is not to be believed.
Well, I've got another name for it, but go ahead.
But, well, he threatened to kill me if I told about his secret sexual life. And he said to me, and I quote, "In the heat of assaulting me and slamming me against the wall, I will kill you and I'll be exonerated because I'm a rabbi."
When we get back, Doctor, I want to find out why it is so difficult for a rabbi to divorce, and why Nylander felt that if he divorced, he would not be able to hold on to his position as one of the most powerful rabbis in the New Jersey area. Here in the studio with me, Dr. Charlotte Rolnick Schwab is with us, the author of Sex, Lies, and Rabbis, Breaking a Sacred Trust. Doctor, in addition to what you've already told us, I wanted to ask you how it has come about that it's so difficult for a rabbi to get a divorce and maintain his position within a synagogue? Why is that?
Actually, it isn't difficult. Rabbis get divorced all the time. But my opinion is that probably Rabbi Newlander thought that if he got divorced, he'd lose his standing.
You know, that has been suggested by many of the other witnesses, referring to, for instance, Elaine Sonsini and others that knew him. If he wanted to get rid of his wife so badly, I was surprised that they just didn't get a divorce, but he truly thought he would lose his position as rabbi.
You know, I have a different take on this. I think that Rabbi Newlander wanted his wife as a cover for his sexual life. He claims he had an open marriage. A lot of baloney. Do you really think that Carol Newlander would have agreed to that?
No way.
I didn't. There is no way that I would have agreed to that. And when my husband, rabbi husband, saw that I wouldn't, he threatened to kill me if I told.
You know what's interesting? Just before this murder went down, the two had a huge argument, according to their son, Matthew Newlander. And she, Carol, had gone downstairs and gotten the rabbi's suitcases and said, "Here, pack your stuff. Get out." Very similar to what you're saying happened to you. When you made it clear you would not tolerate that behavior in a marriage, you were threatened. She made it clear by bringing him his suitcase. She wouldn't tolerate it, and the next thing you know, she ends up dead on the floor.
A wife is a good cover for a rabbi. Any rabbi who is out there living what they call a philandering, a word I hate, life, a womanizing, a word I hate, life, I say they're abusers of women. Any rabbi out there doing that, gee, it helps to have a wife at home, doesn't it? You've got this marvelous double life, this secret life. This little Rebbitzin is at home catering to you. You're the rabbi in the synagogue, upholding all the values of Judaism, whereas all the time you're out there with this dirty, awful double life. Well, of course he wanted his wife for a cover, and if she no longer would do it, she's poof, gone, in the river, blown away.
You know, your choice of words are very canny, because as you will recall, some of the testimony said the rabbi wanted his wife poof, gone. Here in the studio with me, a very special guest today, Dr. Charlotte Rolnick Schwab is with us. She's a psychotherapist as well as an author of Sex, Lies, and Rabbis, Breaking a Sacred Trust. Doctor, we are hearing from Lynn Jenoff on the stand, and the state has kicked it off by describing his self-esteem problems. You know what? I'm just an old trial lawyer. I don't get it. Why are we hearing about a hitman's self-esteem problems?
I have no idea. I don't think it has any bearing on this case. The man is a hitman. He killed this woman.
The only trial strategy I can think of is that they are building up that Lynn Jenoff was vulnerable at a certain point in his life, that he was going to AA practically every night, that he was from a broken home, his family was on the skids, he had been living in a halfway house for a period of time. Then he meets the rabbi. Rabbi Fred Newlander, incredibly powerful, takes him under his wing and transforms him to
a hitman. Exactly. That he would do anything the rabbi wanted. He felt like a Jew, a person for the first time in his life. This rabbi giving him the spurious attention that the rabbi chooses to give the people he wants to give. He said the people in the first two rows he hugs. You know, these rabbis know how to do this. The ones who are the womanizers, as they call them, they know the ones to hug. They're charming, they're charismatic. And he brought this Len Jenoff into his fold because he had a purpose. This was a man who was going to take care of the woman who was the thorn in his life, who wouldn't go along with his double life, his secret life, so that he could do what he wanted and abuse other women at will sexually for what his purposes were.
Well, you know, another point is that if there had only been just the mistress, Elaine Sonsini, the rabbi may have had a leg to stand on. But then we find out about another congregant that was his mistress. And then, I believe under seal, there are several others whose names are not being mentioned. The fact that there was this string of women adds credence to your point that he was
Yes.
in love with none of them.
Exactly. And Nancy, this is exactly the case. When you see these rabbis who are abusing women, it's not usually one. It's many more than one. The other murder case in California, that was a murder of a woman temple president the morning after she moved in with a rabbi to leave her husband. And this rabbi was talked about by people, reported in the press as having many women, and his wife then divorced him. This woman temple president moves in with him, and the morning after she moves in, she's murdered by a hitman. They never found that hitman, and one wonders what was going on there. Was this rabbi tired of this woman? Why did they never investigate that rabbi in the case? A book was written about that particular case, and it's very important to point out that some experts believe that and based on studies, they don't just believe this, that between 18 and 39% of all rabbis, all clergy, are guilty of sexual abuse of one kind or another. That's an astounding figure. And we need policies in place in synagogues, in churches, to deal with this, to acknowledge it, not to cover it up, not to sweep it under the rug, but to deal with it, to acknowledge the victims who report this, and to give sexuality education to rabbis, not to have these charismatic kinds of perhaps sociopaths as rabbis.
Interesting point. All of this will be burning in the jurors' minds as they make their decision this morning. Here in the studio with me this morning, psychotherapist and author Dr. Charlotte Rolnick Schwab is with us. She's the author of Sex, Lies, and Rabbis, Breaking a Sacred Trust. In this case, Doctor, it's going to come down, to boil down to a credibility contest between two liars. You've got Lynn Jenoff, who claims he worked for the Mossad, that's a lie, that he worked for Playboy Enterprises, that's a lie, and that he was hired to kill Carol Newlander. Then you've got Rabbi Newlander, who has lied to many, many women, his congregants, and possibly to police and a jury. So how can the jury determine who's lying this time?
I think that there's a lot of other evidence in the case, besides just the Len Jenoff testimony, that corroborates that this rabbi wanted this woman dead. And so we don't only have to rely on Len Jenoff. Somebody killed her, obviously. He admitted it. And the evidence stacks up that this hitman was hired. The money, the other people who said this rabbi wanted this woman dead. I worry that this is not going to stop with Carol Newlander being dead, that these rabbis who are out there, who need to be weeded out of our precious sacred religion, of our precious sacred rabbinate, who are perhaps sociopaths, who don't belong in the rabbinate, because if not, we can have other murders. If these men are there being charming, hugging the Len Jenoffs of the world, hugging only those who for their own purposes they want to hug because they have these ulterior motives, life is not precious the way it's supposed to be in Judaism. And so I'm hoping that we get justice in this case.
You know my concern, Doctor? You stated accurately that many members of the public, and possibly on this jury, hold rabbis, priests, ministers up on a pedestal. I often do, in my own faith. And that's going to present the state, the prosecution, with yet another hurdle. This isn't just any defendant they're trying to prove guilty. This is a rabbi that, even with the name rabbi, carries with him a certain degree of additional trust, additional believability. How difficult will it be for the state to get this man treated, Rabbi Fred Newlander, like any other person in our justice system?
I think it depends on who's on the jury. That's the way our system works. And hopefully we'll have 12 people on that jury who will be able to listen and hear and see the truth, weigh all of this evidence, see that this man is the arrogant man he is. He sits there like so arrogant, so aloof, no feeling, the same way that his son described him to be the night that his
I've got to
wife
tell
was
you, when I
murdered.
watched Matthew Newlander on the stand, he is still, the pain is so fresh. And it's been years since his mom was murdered. And you could see the pain on Matthew's face as he testified. Everybody, we are taking a quick break. Before we sign off, Doctor, I want the last word to go to you. Everyone here in the studio, Dr. Charlotte Rolnick Schwab, psychotherapist and author of Sex, Lies, and Rabbis, Breaking a Sacred Trust.
I think the important thing is to talk to women out there who may be victims of rabbis and other clergy and don't know where to turn and think there is nowhere to turn. There now are some places to turn. There are advocates who can help you. You can come forward. There's Rabbi Arthur Gross Schaefer, who wrote on my book jacket. There's Rabbi Marshall Zimmerman, who also wrote on my book jacket. I was interviewed on TV in Florida last week with a Rabbi Silvers, who will be an advocate for women. There is Dr. Gary Schoner. I'm compiling a list of therapists and people around the country. You're not alone. Come forward. There are too many of you being abused out there, is what I want to say, and we need to put a stop to this. There are also women's groups, women's rights groups of all kinds where you can go and find some help. I have a 7-step healing program in my book. It's geared toward Judaism, and with prayers from Judaism, it can be adapted to any religion so that you can heal from this process. It's too late for Carol Newlander, but let's hope it won't be too late for any other women, those of you who are out there who can learn that there is help.
Doctor, you're just as eloquent in person as your book is. Thank you.
Thank you.